Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Caregiver's Toolbox, tools for everyday caregiving. My name is Ryan McAniff, the host of the podcast, as well as the owner of Minute Women Home Care in historic Lexington, Mass. And I am here joined with Bob and George Colantuoni. How do you pronounce your last name?
Colantuoni.
Colantuoni, my gosh.
Yeah,
Well,
the U is silent.
we've only talked 100 times. So Colantuoni, and they are the owners of Well Aware Care. And we've had them on. This is the second time you've been on the podcast. The first time we were talking about your sleep pad. And now we're going to be talking about your Viar system. But to remind people, what is the basic overview of what Well Aware Care does, what you're all about, and the fundamentals of your company?
So you want me to take that one, George?
Sure. Take it, Bob.
Take it away, Bob.
So at the core of our company, what we do and what we like to do is we like to take data from all different types of devices and present them to the caregivers to allow them to make a well-informed decision on how to improve the quality of care for people. So that's at the core of it, what we do with our product. Now, how do we do that? We have several different devices that are hooked to our ecosystem that do monitoring and sensing and send us information. And then we take that and add artificial intelligence to it and automation and do a host of things with that as far as alerts and notifications. But at the core of it, we're all about, helping caregivers give better care through the use of information.
Yeah, and so when we spoke about the sleep pad, it was fascinating because you have your router system that then talks to your software hub and all of this data that can be collected. And I kind of was a bit of a fanboy because it would just blew my mind that there was so much data that would be available through devices that didn't have to be interacted with once installed. And, one of the issues that I had seen time and time again is that people come up with these great, I don't want to say easy because I know it's not easy, but it's very easy to get to something with technology that can give this data. It's not that hard. The issue that you're overcoming is that the seniors do not have to interact with it in any way, shape, or form. So if somebody has memory loss or somebody just doesn't like technology or they don't want to be involved in it whatsoever, it doesn't matter. And the issues that you have with a lot of these other people that are coming up with technology for seniors is that the seniors somehow need to interact with it. And not everybody wants to interact with it, or unfortunately, they might not remember to interact with it. And that's where I thought you really differentiated yourself in being able to have technology that would monitor people, would be able to give a lot of data on them without the caregiver needing to interact with it whatsoever. I mean, without the senior needing to interact with it whatsoever. So you guys had a sleep pad that we talked about in the last one, and now you have a Viar fall detection system. And so tell me about the Viar. What is that? How is that different than what you had before with your visualizer? And where do you see things going in the future with this?
So you hit on the core of what we do, which is we look for devices that do not need interaction, right? And the Viar, which is a wall-mounted fall detector, falls into that quite nicely. So it sits on the wall about 5. Hey, Bob, can you turn your microphone off? I'm getting like a lot of feedback.
Wow.
Sorry, Ryan.
That's fine.
So it's a wall-mounted fall detection. It's always on. It sits there and it's looking for any type of event where someone has fallen. So it's not only just fallen that it's looking for any type of fall where somebody's laying on the ground. They could be having a medical issue. They could be having a seizure. They could be having any of those things. It's going to send off an alert to a caregiver who's going to respond quickly. And by having this, we think, it fills in the gap between like an assisted living where there's a caregiver that comes in every 2 hours or every hour, and it's that between period where incidents always happen, right? It's always it's when you don't expect it that it really does happen. And so we think that the fall detector will be a great fill-in for that.
And so this fall detector, as you said, it's on the wall, and it's roughly about the size of like a coaster. It's not a huge piece of technology. It's relatively like a couple, maybe 2 decks of cards or something like that. How big is this?
I would say it's about as big as a hockey puck, right, Bob?
Yeah, it's like 3 inches in diameter, and it works off of the technology. The device is made by Viar Corporation, and it's works on radio frequencies. That's how it detects movement throughout the room. So it's a safe device. It's non-intrusive, meaning there's no wearables. It just sits on the wall, the peripheral, and the seniors don't have to interact with it at all.
And so it learns the seniors' movements, and you program it to give it an idea of what room it's in. And if somebody's sitting in a chair or laying down on a bed, that won't get recorded and sent to the family as a fall event. But in the other areas of the room, if it recognizes any type of, I assume it's like a horizontal, if it realizes somebody's in a horizontal position, then that would send an alert to family members?
That's correct. We actually use it 2 different ways. So its primary role is a fall detection device, meaning that if somebody is in a horizontal position on the floor, then it has the capability. It notifies us, and we generate SMS text messages to the caregivers. But we also use it as a presence detector, meaning as you put these throughout the home, the residence, we can tell what rooms the residents are in and how long they spend in each room. And that's valuable data for a host of different reasons pertaining to the overall wellness that we're hoping to promote in the future.
So, I mean, and for people that are listening, to give it an idea and why this all matters and why this, first of all, you can, in theory, go out and buy all of this hardware on your own if you wanted to. It's for sale online. What these guys have done is they've built software that allows all these devices to talk to one another, and then they have a portal that families can log into, and they can easily read all of this data. So at the crux of what Wellaware Care does, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're a software company that's using other people's hardware and making it work for what you want it to through your software skills.
Absolutely. We're software as a service company. And you touched on several of these things. So ease of use is primary at our core. The mindset here was, if you buy these devices individually, you have to figure out how all of their apps work. Then you have to have accounts for all that. And it's very cumbersome. And a lot of people get frustrated and they give up. With our solution and our products, you learn our interface, and we take care of all the technology on the back end. So we present it in a very straightforward, easy to use environment. The other piece to that is we do all the configuration up front. So that means the product is ready when you receive it out of the box. You take it out, we install a private network, you plug it into your internet service provider. Once the routers come online, you literally go out through the rest of the home and just physically plug these things into your electrical outlet. It finds our network and finds its way home, and you're up and running.
I mean, we're talking, when I tested the sleep pad system, my install time was approximately 15 or 20 minutes for everything. So it's very simple to use. And so bringing it back to why I think this is so interesting is that we charge people upwards to $35 an hour for one-on-one care. And one of the top difficult situations is when families have a loved one that has sporadic falls. Now, you are not a fall prevention system, you're a fall detection system. But what happens when somebody's starting to go from being able to be completely independent to going to where they're completely dependent on somebody? Well, there's phases of that. And there are times where somebody falls and they may fall once every 6 months. They may fall once every 3 months. And that falling, and it could be a slow fall. It doesn't even have to be a catastrophic fall. And one of the things that happens is families are in very difficult situations where how do we get care? We can't get 24 hours of care and prevent every fall because that would be cost prohibitive. How do we find out when mom is falling, where she is falling, and how often she is falling? Because believe it or not, as much as you love your mom, she will likely tell you a fib on how often she's falling and stumbling around. And this is a bridge and allows people to know when their loved ones have had a fall or a near fall, and then can use that data and make a decision on whether it's time for home care, whether it's time for assisted livings. Does mom need to move into my home? Or maybe mom is only tripping once every 6 months, and you sit there and say, hey, listen, that's part of getting older. She knows that, she's okay with it, and the system is still there to let us know if mom has a fall. And so
Absolutely, Ryan. And I'm sorry, and we gather all that information and we present that in a pre-canned report that you log into our portal and you can view that at any time. So that's an added benefit to just being alerted to the fact that the fall event happened. We call that a recovered fall. So if they stumble and they fall and they're able to right themselves and get up, that's still indicative of a potential health issue that's underlying.
So a recovered fall, is that something where, just to be clear, does the person need to fall or do they just need to trip?
In either event, if they end up on the ground and then they are able to get up, that's considered a fall detected. If they can't get off the ground and they need assistance, then that's a fall confirmed.
Gotcha. I see. So there's fall detected and fall confirmed. Are families going to get alerts for fall detected, or is it only for fall confirms?
So the system's configurable. So if you have somebody that is prone to fall and they have a history of falls, you can set the system so as soon as they fall, within seconds you'll get an SMS text message. But if you want to, if they're not known to fall, and every now and then people stumble and fall and it's not catastrophic, you can tune the system so you will be notified of that event, but you won't get an SMS text message about it.
That's interesting. And so I did a podcast interview yesterday with a woman named Carol Merrick, and you won't know her. She's down in Dallas, but she's a solo aging coach. She's 70 years old herself. She's aging by herself. She doesn't have kids. And one of the things she tells her neighbors is if they haven't seen her or heard from her in 24 hours, to give her a call. But this system right here is the alternative to the more traditional system of knocking on a door and giving a call to make sure somebody's okay. Then if somebody doesn't even need to be bothered, and if Carol fell or injured herself and one of her neighbors could get that alert instantaneously on her phone. And the reason I bring this up is that this system can be used for people who are aging alone. It can be used in assisted livings. It can be used in homes where you have two seniors that are getting older, but you just want to make sure that there's not eyes and ears on them, but there's some type of system in place to notify you if there's a fall. And then I think the other big one is where adult children don't live anywhere close to where their parents live. And like my dad lives down in Florida. He has a girlfriend who lives with him. So there's certainly some safety there. But if she were to pass away and he were to live alone, a system like this would certainly be worthwhile installing, because, hey, listen, how am I going to know if he's okay other than giving him a call and hoping that he answers the phone?
So I think what you're gathering is the concept of like neighborhood care, right? Neighbors helping neighbors. And that's a perfect use for this. So if you live in a neighborhood and your neighbors are keeping an eye on you, any type of fall or any type of emergency, they will be notified and they'll be able to respond quickly. And what Bob didn't say was, we're not only sending this out through text message, but we're also building Alexa into this. So it will be a two-way communication. So if a fall does occur, it will ask the person who's fallen if they want to call the people who are on their emergency contacts. And if they respond yes, it will call. If they say no, it won't. But if they don't answer at all, it will just automatically call. And it will alert people that way that there's another fall that has occurred, and they'll be able to have that two-way communication.
And I will say in my family where everybody's over 70, Alexa is a big hit. So it's already, for many seniors, it's already built in because it's got it's got all the features that we're accustomed to. And now you're going to integrate that in with the well-aware care system.
Yes, sir.
And so one of the things one of the things why, for some listeners, why that matters is that if you imagine if your mom or dad is on the floor, a lot of seniors, maybe they still have house phones, but a lot of baby boomers don't have house phones as well. They have traditional cell phones now. And, if they can't reach that cell phone, to be able to talk to your parent about how they're doing, they have to pick up the phone. And so with the well-aware integration with Alexa is, if I understand correctly, it's almost like a speakerphone. It's just, you can go into, the adult child can go into an app and literally speak into it, and it will be broadcast out on the Alexa. Is that correct?
That is, well, it's called drop-in, and you can set it either way. You can set it so, they have to say, yes, I'll accept the call, or you can just make it be an open communication where you just kind of drop it on somebody. Does that make sense?
So
under normal usage, you would probably have to accept the call. And that's the beautiful thing about Alexa, is that they can accept the calls and use it on an everyday basis just to stay in touch with their loved ones. And then in an emergency, we can leverage it now to get them help. So we would bypass that and just drop in on them and say, we've got an alert, you've fallen, do you need help?
And then they can say yes or no.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to highlight too, with the Viar device, there's a visual notification on the device. So a lot of times a senior may fall and they can't get up and they can't call for help, but they can look at the Viar device and there's actually an LED that blinks on it. And that's a visual cue that the fall is detected and we're reaching out for help for you. So it's a peace of mind thing for the senior.
Absolutely. So they go over there, they see that this is blinking, and they know that the system's working. So whether they communicate or not, they at least have the peace of mind that there is going to be alerts going out. And this, and in today's day and age, it's probably going to be a question you could ask, but you can send this out to 50 different cell phones if you want. It's in theory unlimited to the amount of cell phones, and I imagine email addresses that can be alerted. So if you have a family I say family, if you have true family of 4 or 5 people and then close friends of another 4 or 5 people, well, if there's a fall event that's happening, you want as many people to know about this as possible, especially if, people are at work, going, traveling around. Out of 10 people, somebody in theory should be close by to be able to go over there and see what's going on.
Exactly, and that's what George was talking about with the neighborhood system. So in a lot of senior communities, people keep an eye on each other, and now with this system, we can show them the system and say, you can leverage this now. So if something happens, you'll get an alert on your smart device, and you'll know you have to get over there immediately.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so one of the questions I asked that we didn't touch on was that beforehand, when we did our podcast a year and a half ago, whenever it was, we were talking about a visualizer. And that visualizer was called a visualizer because it wasn't a camera, but by default, people were going to call it a camera because it did give you a brief, an outline of the person. So you knew what was going on. Now with this Viar system, it is all just radio frequencies, and there is no camera or visualizer or anything like that. It is just, it looked like a heat map, or is that not how it's going to look? Oh no, there's a graph there that is going to show you where somebody is.
That's correct. And just to touch base on that, so the visualizer is a product that we offered initially, but unfortunately that product has been discontinued. So we will not be selling that in the future. But At the core of our system, so we heavily leverage Samsung SmartThings application. And what people can do is you can add any SmartThings device to this account in your own home. It doesn't necessarily have to be supported by well-aware care, but you can say you want to put smart locks in, which, by the way, are on our roadmap in a future release. But you could go out, as long as they're supported by Samsung SmartThings, you can buy those locks and add them to the account. And then the event of an emergency, when the EMS shows up, you can unlock the doors remotely for them, so they don't have to break the door down to get in. You can also add cameras. I mean, it's just on and on and on. Any device that you want to add to the system that is supported by Samsung SmartThings is a very easy integration.
Gotcha. And it goes back to that, once that router is installed, which takes a whopping 5 minutes, everything talks to that router, so you can have any type of smart things like you said you want. And it could be that way you can, if somebody's not a fall risk, there might be other hardware that would make more sense for somebody else versus necessarily the Viar visualizer, or no, the Viar radio frequency. And so when you're purchasing your system, it's all a la carte. So you don't have to get the fall detection system if you don't want it, or you can get the fall detection system for just one room instead of all 5 rooms that are in the apartment or in the home.
Correct.
And so where do you see that? I mean, where do you see that going? George talked about the neighborhood. Where do you see that the average person is going to be using this? How much hardware are they going to need? And do you think that the average home is going to need 5 or 6 of these Viar radio frequency, or is it going to need? I know it depended on home. Is there kind of an idea that if you have 1,000 square foot apartment, you're going to need 4 of them? If you have 2,000, you're going to need 8. 3,000, you need 12. Do you have any idea of what people can expect when looking at that?
Absolutely. So the bottom line is this: it's you want to put these devices wherever falls are likely to happen, and it's basically I want a comprehensive coverage in my home. I have a large home. I have 3 bathrooms, so wherever a fall is likely to take place, you want to install these devices. If you have a very large, some people have a home with a great room, right? The device will currently span 6 feet left and right, and 13 feet out straight in front of it. So if your room is larger than that square footprint, you can add a couple of these to cover the whole area. But some people have a very small, and most people have a smaller dwelling, and you could get away with just 1 or 2 devices.
So each Viar radio frequency device is covers 12 by 13.
That's correct.
So about 150 square feet is what it's able to cover.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So that would make sense that if you had a modest bedroom, you would probably only want 1 of those in there. If you had a bigger bedroom, you might need 2 of them in there.
Yeah.
And so, but in theory, if you were living in the Hamptons in a 10,000 square foot home, the sky's the limit of the amount of devices that can talk to the brain and the router. So you could cover the biggest home or the smallest home in the world. You just need the amount of the proper amount of Viars.
Exactly. And another thing about the device, like our sleep pad, we talked earlier, you said this isn't really meant to be a preventative device. What we do to try to help that is we use the devices to illuminate the pathway to and from the bathroom. So the Viar now will, as well as the sleep mattress, turn the lights on and off in the nighttime as the residents get in and out of bed.
Yeah, so when somebody gets up out of the sleep pad, or I imagine you can you can program it pretty easily that if it's between the hours of 9 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning, and the Viar recognizes it, it will turn on smart lights that it knows is the path to the bathroom.
Exactly.
And then that will help reduce falls, because obviously if having well lit floors is important to be able to prevent somebody tripping over whatever it is. Guys, it's unbelievable. I mean, even I don't remember the last time we talked. It was probably a year ago, but that must have been some ups and downs to find out that the visualizer was going away. When you started realizing that was going away, what was the kind of the thought process in that? Like, what happened? What George is laughing, so it must have been something that happened. But that must have been kind of, were you shocked, or did you kind of expect it, or what were your thinking when, you know, one of the big parts of your system was going to be discontinued?
You want me to take this one, George? Oh, you're muted, George. Go ahead.
So when we started this, Ryan, we didn't build this around one device. We wanted to bring in, you know, as many devices as we can. And losing our first solution that we had built was a little upsetting. It was right in the middle of the pandemic. You know, Bobby and I were working from home each, and you know, we were a little distraught. But it's funny the way things work out, right? So about a month later, we discovered this product from Viar, and it opened up the whole world of possibility, and it even continues to grow off of that. I mean, so we're looking at bringing in med minders and you know, glucose monitors and a whole bunch of wellness devices that we probably wouldn't have found if, you know, we had stopped at that visualizer. So finding the Viar allowed us to even expand our vision even more. And I think it was actually a good thing, though at the time it was a little disturbing because we had spent, you know, some money and quite a few months on making it work. Was that fair, Bob?
Yep, no, you're spot on, and that's the nature of this business. One thing about the company is that our software development team is very nimble and very reactive, and all we have to do is when we're presented with a challenge like that is find the solution and then implement it. So another thing that happened in parallel with that vision going away is that they decided, for whatever reason, to stop making all the discrete products, and we were heavily leveraging their router, their Samsung router. So we re-architected the product and came up with a solution, and that's what we do, and we always will. We're constantly looking for second and third source vendors, and we're looking for new solutions.
And just so that people understand at home who are listening to this, this isn't like two guys that, you know, are figuring all this out for the first time in terms of how technology works. Your background is working with large technology firms and companies. And so this is par for the course. Like, you're going to have some ups and downs, and some of the hardware that you use or some of the software that you use is going to go sideways sometimes. And that's part of the software and hardware development game, that you're going to have to come up with creative solutions. And hopefully, if a door opens, a door closes, another one opens, and it provides even more opportunities like the Viar did for you.
Exactly.
So, and so when you talk about new releases coming out, obviously you're getting to the point right now where you're going to be hopefully releasing the Viar in the next 30 to 45 days, roughly.
That's correct. We're telling people by the end of Q2, which is 2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right. So even sooner than I was saying. But how often do you think new releases are going to be coming out with this system, as you know, as you're trying to grow as rapidly as you can?
You're muted, George.
So Bob and I have multiple discussions about this. I always want it like in four weeks, and he tells me 8. So I'm going to say every 6 weeks there'll be a new release, and the next thing we will release will be a more advanced GUI, but also the ability to take this data and put a predictive nature to it. Look at how many falls have occurred, where they've fallen, what time of day, and we'll be able to say, this is the time that you need to watch out for falls, because 80% of the falls occur during this time of the day, and they occur in this place. And I think once we can get to that, then we can really start to move this whole concept of wellness forward, right? So now it's just not reactive; it's all proactive, and you're putting caregivers in when you need to put them in, and when downtime when you don't need them as much. I think over time, as it gets smarter and as the data gets more involved and the analytics get more advanced, I think it will just be a great benefit for people when they're trying to decide, their care options.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason why I like it too is because, as we've talked about before, I think it's just proactively looking ahead. I think there are a lot of, I was talking with somebody, I'll leave them nameless. I was telling them about your system, and I was like, I want to send you over a 60-second video about this. She goes, don't bother. I don't have the time to watch a 60-second video. There's no way that technology will ever replace one-on-one care. And I'm like, well, we're not trying to replace one-on-one care. Excuse me. What we're doing these days is that as the cost of care continues to go up, labor continues to go up, our prices are eventually going to be at $40 an hour for private home care services. Without a doubt, they're going to be very close to that, if not at that. Well, there are going to be a lot of people that either can't afford these services, or they can afford a lesser amount of these services because they've gone up and basically doubled over the last 10 years. And so having a system like yours in there only makes sense, that something's going to come in and say, hey, let's just record some data and then find out when mom's most at-risk times are. Oh, they're between the hours of 12 a.m. and 8 a.m. Well, we better get somebody in there from 11 to 9 in the morning, and that way we know we're getting the best bang for our buck when it's about protecting mom. And the idea that everybody has $40 an hour, $40 in a one-time hit isn't a lot, but when you think about 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, and indefinitely going on, because the fact of the matter is mom or dad is probably not going to get better. They're probably going to continue to decline and need more care. That
Right.
spend down occurs very, very quickly, and it can be panicking to families when they realize that $20,000 a month or $10,000 a month is being spent on private home care services, and there needs to be an option for people that either A, can't afford it, or B, want to just supplement it with being able to see what's going on with mom or dad. And also, you have the ability to log into a system at any point in time that you want that is going to be able to give you data based on how your mom is doing or dad is doing with their actual, what is it called? Not their analytics. I know it's on analytics, but it's their biometrics. You're going to be able to see quite a bit of information about how your parents' biometrics is going, that you can then in turn talk to a doctor about remotely and get involved in that way, versus having to have a geriatric care manager be there at the doctor's appointment or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's all true statements, Ryan, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and so it just seems like that as labor, we see it as labor going up, and not making it too political, but you think McDonald's is just going to lay over and pay their people $15 an hour when they're used to paying them $7? It's unlikely. They're going to bring technology in to try to offset those labor costs and make it cheaper for them, and they're doing that through the kiosks. And the same thing's going to happen in the senior care technology world. The caregivers are always going to be needed, and I don't think caregivers are going to have a hard time finding jobs. There's plenty of work out there for caregivers. The fact of the matter is we have more people that need caregivers than we have caregivers to provide for them. So you're going to be able to help out families at the beginning parts of their care needs. And quite frankly, I think there are going to be some families that sit there and say, hey, listen, we can't afford private home care in any way, shape, or form. But what we can afford is something like this from Well Aware Care, where we might not be able to prevent the fall. That might be something that's not realistic in our world, but at least we can be alerted of when the fall occurs immediately, and then we can minimize that as much as possible by having family go over there during those, you know, those red hot times or those risky times.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you want to always avoid is someone falling and waiting for someone to find them, right? Because that's a crapshoot. You could visit somebody every couple of days and they could fall and they could be laying there on the ground for days until, you know, that person comes. If you use well-aware care, you'll know instantly. You'll know that that person needs some help, and that's really what we got into this for. You know, I mean, I found, you know, when my mom died, she died alone, and she lay there on the ground, and we didn't know how long she had laid there, and it always struck me as, you know, it's such a tragic thing to go through that. And who knows? I mean, if I had been instantly alerted, I may have been able to go over there and help her, right? So she died of a heart attack, and I think that opportunity is out there for people, and I don't think it needs to cost $1 million to get that service anymore. I think it's the technology's there, and let's use it, because I truly believe, and this is really at the core of what Bob and I believe, and that everyone has a right to good senior care, to great senior care, right? Everyone should have that access to it, and we should take care of our seniors. And this is a way that we can contribute to that.
Well, I think we can all agree the last 19 months have been an utter disaster on taking care of our seniors. But we're certainly getting into the right way of being able to do that for a lower cost amount of money. And certainly it's not going to replace one-on-one care. It's not going to, there are some things that a human being is going to have to be there for to do, but it certainly can supplement it. And, you know, the idea that everybody can pay $40 an hour, or for a geriatric care manager, $200 an hour is kind of a laughable statement. And there are going to have to be compromises made in some cases. And this is better than nothing. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. It's just that if all you can afford, if you have somebody who's a fall risk, who's stubborn and is going, like I had a friend in Charlestown, I'm in Medford, and there was a guy that lived on the 3rd floor, and it was all stairs going up, and he would go up and down, and the fire department would be there all the time. And apparently he just refused to leave his apartment. He wasn't going to move into assisted living. And the people that lived in that building with him, it was just a 3-plex, were like, what happens if this guy dies and nobody like realizes it for like a month? You know, like this guy's declining badly. He's not able to go up those stairs, and he ended up having a fall down some of those stairs, and he ended up dying from it. But the point being is that there are seniors out there that are stubborn, that aren't going to accept any private help. They're not going to move out of their home, and and that's what we call in the system the right to fail. Somebody has the right to fail. Well, if they're in that position, then having well-aware care allows them to still have their independence that they want, but also alerts family members or neighbors if there's an emergency going on, and so that somebody isn't laying on the floor for 2 days and until a police does a wellness check. So there's definitely going to be some people from all different walks of life that this might be able to be able to help. I guess
Total agreement.
Total. Sorry, I need to ask you more questions. I'm saying more statements, but anyway, anyway, guys, we've been doing this for 45 minutes. Are there any other things that you want to talk about regarding this well-aware care system? One thing I would note is that you have a 978 number. That's a Massachusetts number, but I imagine you can work with anybody, anywhere. That's what the system was designed for, correct?
Absolutely. That system's divine. We configure it in-house, and we can ship it anywhere. And with very straightforward instructions, anybody can deploy this and be up and running in no time.
Awesome. Any other things you want to mention about this?
No, I think you did a great job with the questions. we're very excited to ship our latest product, and we can't wait to start helping people and start living better lives.
Well, George, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time from all the hustle and bustle and trying to get this thing up and running. Not that it's not up and running, but finalized, if you will, and coming on the show.
Thank you, Ryan.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan.
And thank you all for listening to the Caregiver's Toolbox. Reach out to Well Aware Care. You can find them at wellawarecare.com, or you can give them a call at 978-506-5189. And past that, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day.